Just finished a Costco run, and it cost me $472 to fill up at Costco for maybe seven days a week, 10 days at the most, maybe even shorter, depending on how fast the kids eat the food. But anyway, $472, and I wanted to talk through how Bitcoin insulates a person from inflation. So when I see something cost $472 to shop for a family of six, I don't even flinch. It's like, that's insane. I don't know how other people are paying those prices, but doesn't affect me. So let's talk through the effects of that. First of all is, why are prices up? They are not up because of corporate greed. The margins for whether it's Kroger or Costco or Walmart, you're looking at low single digit percentages. So virtually none of the price increase is the result of corporate greed or profit seeking or anything like that. That's always been the case, and none of this stuff is a result of that. Okay, so what's actually going on here? Well, what actually is going on is the government has been printing absolutely vast amounts of money. And whenever the government prints money in Washington, D.C., it starts distributing out through bankers and defense contractors. And basically, however close you are to the Federal Reserve and to the government, you get the money first. Well, it takes a while for that new money, all that printed new money, to work its way through the economy. And as it does, prices rise. Because the amount of money in the economy and the total amount of stuff you can buy with the money in the economy always has to balance. So if the entire economy is two apples and two $1 bills, well, each apple is worth $1 because the only thing $1 can buy is an apple. Two at $2 bills buys two apples. $1 is worth one apple. It's simple. Well, if you magically drop two additional dollar bills out of the sky, eventually it will adjust where each apple costs $2. Why is that? Because there's now $4 and only two apples. And if all the things you can buy are two apples, and if all the money you could buy with it is $4, then each dollar will buy you half an apple. Because again, it always adjusts. That ratio has to be the same. So when Washington, D.C., well, more specifically the Federal Reserve, when they print vast quantities of new money, it slowly trickles the way through the economy, and people like you and me are on the very bottom of that trickle down effect, meaning we are the last ones to get the benefit of that new money. And by the time it gets to us, the prices have already risen, meaning everything gets more expensive for us, even though everything's getting less expensive for the people that are closest to the money printer. Okay, so how can you reverse that effect? Well, the best way is to buy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin rises faster than the government is printing money. Now, it's not a completely linear, it's not like a straight line. It's obviously volatile because we are in the early stages of Bitcoin adoption. So it's volatile, but sort of on net, there's never been a 4-year period where the price of Bitcoin has not at least doubled. Well, as bad as inflation is, it's not quite doubling in any 4-year period. Not yet. You might feel like it, but it's not quite there. So that's the worst Bitcoin has ever done. The best it's ever done in a 4-year period is ridiculously higher than that. So on average, Bitcoin's growing, I don't know, somewhere between 40% to 60% per year. And obviously, inflation is growing at, I don't know, 4%, 7%, 9%, depending on who you ask and depending on what you're buying. One second. Okay, so as a result of that, if you buy Bitcoin and then later you spend it on stuff to improve the life of you and your family, you are effectively living life at a discount, which is what I am doing. I'm living technically for free because I'm using Bitcoin that I bought back in the fall of 2022. That's up substantially. So I'm living for free, but my total cost basis for all the Bitcoin I've ever bought, the cheapest Bitcoin I ever bought was about $6,400. Most of the early Bitcoin I bought in 2017 and 2018 was probably in the ballpark of maybe $9,000. And the most recent Bitcoin, when you pile in all the most recent Bitcoin I bought, maybe that's pulled my cost basis, which means the average price that I paid for Bitcoin, probably pulls it into, let's use a round number and say $30,000. Well, Bitcoin is now $97,000. So a little simple math. This is not exact math, but so in round numbers, if my cost basis is $30,000 a Bitcoin and I'm spending it with my Coinbase debit card, which is how I buy everything, including how I just bought $472 worth of stuff at Costco, that Bitcoin cost me, I'm going to guess, 97 divided by 30, all that, something like 150 bucks. So I effectively walked into Costco and walked out with a massive pile of stuff for my family to eat over the next 7 to 10 days that it cost me roughly 150 bucks because the Bitcoin I bought with it, if you average out the price of all the Bitcoin I've ever bought, is probably in the ballpark of $30,000 and Bitcoin's at $97,000, which means something like $472 when you back out it down to the price you paid for the Bitcoin is in the ballpark of, let's call it 150 bucks. So getting all that stuff for 150 bucks doesn't feel bad at all. And so I'm shopping where everything is 70% off, basically. So that is the way Bitcoin shields you from inflation. Because the government cannot print more Bitcoin, and they will and always do print more dollars, it means the Bitcoin becomes more valuable than the dollars over time. In addition to the fact that people are switching from US dollars to Bitcoin. It's slowly happening. It's not a fast overnight thing, but people are slowly switching from US dollars to Bitcoin. As more and more people switch, the price of Bitcoin goes higher. The value of the US dollar goes down. But the primary reason the US dollar price is going down is because the government is printing so much of it out of thin air that it's losing its value because it's not scarce. Something's not scarce if you're constantly just making more of it for your own benefit and at the expense of everyone else who owns US dollars. So, if you want to sort of benefit from Bitcoin to fight inflation, how do you do that? Well, the answer is you buy Bitcoin and you spend it later when it's more valuable. And the degree to which Bitcoin outruns the rate of inflation is the degree to which that you are living at a discount. So again, in broad numbers, when I'm spending Bitcoin at 97,000 a coin that I bought for 30,000 a coin, it means I'm living at whatever. Let's call it a 70% off. It's not quite 70%. It's whatever, 67% off or whatever that number is. But everything I buy in my life is radically discounted. And because I bought enough Bitcoin that the Bitcoin is appreciating faster than my living expenses, it means I'm effectively living for free. Even though the total amount of Bitcoin that I'm spending goes down over time, the US dollar value of the Bitcoin I still have continues to go up faster than I'm spending it, which results in me effectively living for free. So anyway, what does that mean for you? Well, I think Bitcoin is the best way to fight inflation of any invention or discovery that humanity has ever invented or discovered. It is finite. There will only ever be 21 million total Bitcoin in existence. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a tiny little sliver of a Bitcoin. You can buy $1. You can buy a penny. You can buy $10. You can buy whatever. And the more Bitcoin you can afford to buy and the longer you can afford to hold it, the greater your purchasing power. So when the government prints money, it decreases the purchasing power of the US dollars you still own. But because the government cannot do that with Bitcoin, the more US dollars they print out of thin air, the higher the value and purchasing power of your Bitcoin because they can't make more of it. So as they make more of US dollars, it loses its value. But because they cannot do that with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that already exists, of which there will only ever be 21 million, increases in value. And the best way to insulate yourself from inflation is to buy in the future Bitcoin or to spend in the future Bitcoin that you bought now when it's higher in value. And again, there was about 7 months last year between March and October where you could buy an unlimited amount of Bitcoin for between roughly $55,000 and $70,000. And obviously, with Bitcoin at $97,000, that means everyone who did that is living life at a 30% or 40% discount. And it's a whole lot less painful when you walk into Costco and the receipt says $472. That is way less painful if all the Bitcoin you bought at half that price or 30% off or 40% off, or in my case, 70% off. And the longer you hold on to it, I mean, technically, if you want to think about it as me spending the very first Bitcoin I was ever buying, it's like 90% off. So the longer you can hold it and the more you can acquire, the more of your expenses you can pay for in the future with appreciated Bitcoin. And the longer you hold it, the more it appreciates. Again, it's not in a straight line. It goes up and down on its way up. But in general, the longer you can hold it, the more it has time to appreciate in value, which means the greater discount you can live at. So in my case, my Bitcoin that I put into my effectively my spending account, which is my Coinbase account that I use with my Coinbase debit card, the majority of the Bitcoin I own is safely secured in a very safe combination of various things, mainly BitKey, which I recommend. BitKey is the best option. So I've got a huge amount of Bitcoin on BitKey. But what I don't have on BitKey is in a Coinbase account tied to with a Coinbase debit card, and that's what I use for grocery runs and basically all of my day-to-day expenses. So there is enough Bitcoin in that that it is going up faster than I am spending it. As a result, the balance in my Coinbase account basically slowly rises even though I continue to buy $472 of stuff at Costco and everywhere else I shop. I'm spending Bitcoin, but the overall, again, it's not in a straight line. Overall, the value of Bitcoin is increasing faster than I'm spending it, meaning the value of my Coinbase account is slowly rising, even though I'm spending all of my household expenses from that account. So what does that mean? Obviously, my recommendation is the same as always, which is buy as much Bitcoin as you possibly can and hold on to it as long as you can. And if you have enough Bitcoin that it's the primary money you use, then you can use it for expenses like I do. If you're not sure how much is enough, well, again, I recommend buying as much Bitcoin as you can afford, and don't spend it till it's at least worth more than 20% or 25% more than what you paid for it. That way you don't have to check the price of Bitcoin every day to see if it's up or down. You don't want to be trying to spend it when it's like 5% up because the price can swing 5% in a day on a good or bad day. And so you don't want to be sort of cutting it close. But if you bought $10,000 of Bitcoin and that 10,000 is now worth 12,000, go spend $472 at Costco and live for free a little. Anyway, Bitcoin is by far the best way I've found to combat inflation. If I could not use Bitcoin to combat inflation, I don't know what I would do. Everything in the stock market feels overvalued right now, which means I would not want to try to buy. Give me one second. I would not want to try to do the same strategy with stocks or bonds or real estate. In the case of real estate, it's not liquid, meaning you can't you know, sell part of your front yard and buy groceries with it, right? That's just not the way real estate works. It's really hard to get money into and out of real estate. And even with stocks and bonds, you can only get money in and out, during trading hours on weekdays. And you can't get a debit card that lets you spend stocks and bonds. That's just not how they work. Stocks and bonds are not money. You can't spend stocks or bonds with a debit card the way I can with Bitcoin with the Coinbase debit card. So again, it's the only good way I've found to combat inflation. It works fabulously well as long as your finances can handle the ups and downs in the short term of Bitcoin. And in the long term, every 4 years there's going to be a larger dip. And if you got to be patient, if your timing is not great on that, but again, you just hold it. You hold it, you buy more, and as the price rises, you're back in a place where you can spend at a discount. So highly recommended. And if you have any questions, let me know. But like I say, if I had to go to Costco and spend $472 like I just did, and if that $472 actually cost me $472, that would be extremely painful. And on top of that, Costco was also sold out of eggs. Um, Eggs are like the price of eggs has gone up faster, I think, than just about anything else. So that's $472 without eggs. Had I actually bought a couple dozen eggs on top of that, we would have probably crested $500, which is crazy. And again, it only works, in my case, it works because I'm living life at a discount and I'm spending Bitcoin that I bought for a lot less. But for people who are not doing that, it is tough, tough, tough trying to keep your head above water when the government's constantly trying to drown you by printing more money and therefore devaluing the US dollars you already own, therefore making all your prices go up when the government's not giving you any of that newly printed money. That doesn't actually trickle down to you. The prices trickle down to you, and by the time the government spending shows up in a way that positively impacts your life in any meaningful way, all your prices have already gone up, and it's too late. And you're sort of living a life with your money as the melting ice cube. So Bitcoin's the great solution to that. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm always here to help. Thanks, everyone.